Welcome. In this video today, we're going to learn how to integrate and use ChatGPT inside of Python using the OpenAI package. So, let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to learn how to integrate and use ChatGPT in Python today. And this can be quite useful if you are aiming to build something more complex with the power of ChatGPT. So, you want to use the chat completion. You want to have this chatbot, but you also maybe want to react to certain kinds of inputs or outputs. You want to build an application around the power of ChatGPT. This is what this tutorial is for. The first thing we need to do is we need to install the OpenAI package, which we're going to need to access the OpenAI API. So, we're going to open up the command line first, and we're going to type pip install OpenAI. Now, in addition to this package, we're also going to need an API key, something that allows us to authenticate ourselves to the API so that we can send requests from our account. For this, we're going to go to platform.openai.com. Essentially, if you have an account, you just log in. If you don't have an account, you just create an account. But if you have used ChatGPT before, you probably have an account. And once you're here, you just click on your profile in the upper right corner, and then you click on View API Keys. And here, if you have a secret key already, you can just use it. Otherwise, just create a new secret key, copy it, store it in a file, and then you can load it into your script so that you can send requests to the API. Now, one thing that's important to know is that the API requests cost money. Now, it's very, very cheap. You can go to openai.com/pricing. And also, before you click away because you don't want to spend money, I think that when you create a new account for OpenAI, you get some free credits. As we can see here, I have $5, but you will be able to send some requests without having to spend money. You can see the prices here. So, for ChatGPT, which is not GPT-4, it's this one, Chat, and then you have GPT 3.5 Turbo. You spend $0.002 per 1,000 tokens, meaning input and output. We also have the ability to use other language models, but we're going to focus here on chat. So, we're going to use the chat completion, which is also what you have here. I also have a tutorial here, a text-based tutorial. And as of right now, this is the model that this is running on. Maybe quite soon, you're going to also be able to use GPT-4, but today we're going to have to use GPT 3.5 Turbo. What we're going to do now, once we have the API key and once we have the OpenAI package installed, is we're going to import OpenAI. We're going to say API_key equals, and you have to load the file that you're storing your key in. So, we're going to say OpenAPI key in my case, because that's the file that I have here with my key inside of it. I'm going to open it in reading mode, and I'm going to read the key from that file. Now, what we need to do now is we need to take that key and set it as the API key for OpenAI. So, we say OpenAI API_key equals API_key. And by doing that, we now have our key, our account associated with the package, and when we send a request, we send a request through our profile. To get a very basic response to a simple prompt, what we need to do is we need to say response equals and then we can just use OpenAI chat_completion. And what we need to pass here is we need to pass two parameters, the first one being the model that we want to use, and we already talked about this. The model is going to be GPT-3.5-Turbo, and then we also need to have messages. And messages doesn't have to be just one message. It can be a message history, and the message history has to have a certain format. So, what we do here is we say message equals and then we need to pass a list of dictionaries. So, I have this list here, and inside of that list, I have dictionaries. And each dictionary is basically just a key value pair or contains two key value pairs. Namely the first one being the role. So, who said something? And in this case, we're going to be the user that says something. And then we're going to have the second key value pair, which is going to be the actual content. And for example, I could say, what is the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit? Something like that. And maybe we could ask, how do I convert from one to the other? But that's now one message. If I want to add a second message to the history, I can say the same thing again, role, and I think the roles are assistant, user, and system. Now, user being us, the actual user who sends a request to ChatGPT, the assistant being ChatGPT itself, And the system is more like context information, like, you are this and that. So, you can go actually to the tutorial here, and you can see, I think, some examples. Do we have some examples here? System. There you go. So, the system would say something like, you are a helpful assistant. And then the user would say, who won the World Series in 2020. So, system just gives the assistant information about their role. But for now, we're just going to leave that one message here. And in order to actually print the response, we need to, of course, just print the response. So, there's nothing fancy about that. When you call this, I don't know if that's a function or a constructor, but when you call this thing, it actually already sends the request, and you get a response. We still get an empty response. Let me just check why that is. We need to say OpenAI.ChatCompletion.create. So, this is just, I think this is the class, right? Yeah, this is the class, and this is the function that we need to use to actually create the request. So now it should work, and probably it will take some time. There you go. So what we get here as a response is, the main difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit is the scale at which they measure temperature. Celsius is a metric system temperature scale used in most countries around the world, and so on and so forth. I don't want to read everything now, but you can see here that the response is also structured here as a dictionary, as a sort of JSON object where you have the choices, you have the message, and you have some information about how many tokens were used. So you can see here completion tokens, prompt tokens, total tokens. So, we now spend money for 236 tokens. Remember, 1,000 tokens cost $0.002, so 0.2 cents essentially. We can now go ahead and build basically a chat system in Python by just running a loop and constantly adding to the message log. How would we do that? Let's remove all of this here, and let's say we have a chat log, which is an empty list, and we say, while true, user message equals input whatever the user wants to put in. If the user message .lower equals quit, we're going to just break out of the loop, and otherwise, we're going to say, chat log.append, and we're going to append a key value pair, which is role user and content user message. So, this is going to be our message object or messages object, essentially. And what we do now again is we say, response equals OpenAI.ChatCompletion.create. We see again the model is going to be GPT 3.5 Turbo, and the messages are going to be the chat log. And then basically if you want to get the actual response, if you just want to get the message instead of the whole JSON object, what we do is we say, assistant response equals response choices 0 message, and then we want to get the actual content from the message. Now what's important is, of course, since we're talking to ChatGPT and ChatGPT is able to recognize context, we need to also add the assistant response to the chat log. Otherwise, we just have our own messages. We don't have the responses of ChatGPT. So what we want to do first, we want to print, of course, ChatGPT says something. It says assistant response, and we need to strip it from new line characters. Otherwise, it may look funny. Then we're also going to strip it from white spaces. So, we're going to just get a text, and then we're going to say, chat log.append, and we want to append another key value pair here or another message with 2 key value pairs, the role being the assistant and the content being the assistant response. And of course, here we need to also say strip the new line character and the white spaces. There you go. So that should already be it. Now let's run this code. And I think I need to just enter a message, right? So, if I say here, what could I ask? What is the difference between an interpreted and a compiled language? And then we should get a response with an explanation. Then I can ask, which one of the two is Python, for example. So I don't have to specify again that I'm looking for the difference between interpreted and compiled languages. I can just say, okay, and just give me the information. What of the two is Python? So here, I got, now, interpreted language is a programming language. This code is interpreted into machine code on the fly, and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and say, great, which one is Python, then? Question mark. and then it should be able to recognize the context, because if I just ask without context what Python is, it will tell me basically, Python is a programming language. It's used for, I don't know what. And in this case, it tells me Python is an interpreted language because it recognizes the context. So that's basic ChatGPT. And the good thing about this API now is that you can use it to automate things. Now, you can also just use ChatGPT in the web. You don't need an application like this, but you can take this now and you can build functionality around it. You can say, for example, if certain tokens occur in the response or if certain stuff like that, right? So if you say user message lower equals quit, you have the functionality to quit the program. You can also add other commands. You can also say, okay, if the response is containing certain words, I'm going to censor it. I'm going to cause an action because of it. I'm going to do something because of it. And this is how you can use ChatGPT and Python to build more complex chat bots or more complex chatting systems. Alright, so that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video. For free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.